I got a spot in a bank in Chicago, a middle market lender. I felt like I was selling money, which sounds crazy. So much that these communities needed. Why aren't there medical clinics? People can survive the unthinkable. And we really wanted to plant other churches. And so that was going to be another complication. So we're incorporated in Ohio. I felt the need to write these books because I am concerned about where America's going.
Today I have Cece Robinson with me, and it's time we discuss a journey from finance to medicine and beyond. Cece, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Dan. It's a pleasure to be with you here today.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. This is going to be a fantastic discussion. I'm excited for this
Mhm.
journey that you're going to share with us. So my understanding is, you originally started out in the world of finance.
Mhm.
What exactly was that like? Tell us about it.
It was very useful. So I graduated college during a recession, and if you've ever tried to get a job during a recession, you take what you can get. And so I was an economics major with some business background and minor, and I really, really, really wanted to work in China or Hong Kong, but that was not to be. So I got a spot in a bank in Chicago and was a middle market lender. So that's like from like the small family business up to about when you would go public with stock. So that was my sweet spot, and I traveled all over the region up there and got to know some amazing companies. But when it came down to it, I it wasn't for me. I felt like I was selling money, which sounds crazy, but that's what I was doing. I was selling the money services and financial services, and it just wasn't what my heart needed and what I really needed professionally. And so at that point, I had to go through all this career counseling and figure out what do I want to be when I grow up. And so that was like a whole process.
Earlier, I was talking to Jan Ackley, and he was also involved in finance. And what he was doing was kind of helping businesses secure financing for different projects that might be coming up or something like that, almost like
Hmm.
a consumer like trying to acquire a loan.
Hmm.
Is that kind of like what you were doing in this space, or was it
Yeah.
a little? Yeah, okay, perfect, perfect,
So
perfect.
yeah, we worked mainly manufacturing, so working capital, maybe a building loan, expansion for like a new line, a manufacturing line, and so those capital investments. Or I had one client who was a real estate developer, and that was right in the era of the Community Development Reinvestment Act, and that changed the landscape of urban real estate, at least at the time. And so some of those adjustments had to be made. And then I had a company that grew so quickly that then they were bought by another company. So I handled mergers and acquisitions help and that transition financing and that, complex world. And then I had another company that went public. That was crazy. I had companies that went bankrupt, did some insurance and property and casualty insurance lending. It was all over the board, really, like really all over the board, from small, like they have 4 employees, all the way up to they have 400 employees or 500 employees. So it was a really broad experience in the lending market. And then it was also providing like depository services, investment services, that kind of stuff. So it was pretty wide ranging.
Is getting a degree in economics and finance, is that the preferred method from your experience, your opinion, or do they not necessarily need that? How would that look from an education perspective?
I would say yes. You would want probably a business background, finance. Maybe economics could get you there today. I'm not sure that that would be the best path. Um, I know for me, my economics professors were aiming me toward sort of like the think tanks and research and the writing side. I've always been a writer, technical writer versus now fiction. Words are really easy to me, although math also is not hard. Calculus was tough, but normal, just like regular numbers, I'm good with. Um, and so I would say probably that you might get away with the marketing side. The problem is in banking, you have to understand a lot of accounting. And doing the middle market lending, you really need to understand and be able to read a company's financial statements. And so having those academic chops going in is going to help you our bank actually did a lot of training in that area. I'm not sure banks do that now.
So
Yeah.
you were in finance for a little bit of time,
hmm
and then you
hmm
decided to pursue medicine after that. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
So
So
I
talk to
was in
me.
finance for 6 years, 6 years out of school. And after two, I realized this is not what I want to do. And so I went and saw a career counselor and took a bunch of aptitude tests and did Myers-Briggs and some other personality tests and found out, lo and behold, I was not suited to finance or at least to banking, or to sales. Like marketing and sales were not my gig. Um, I can do it. It just drains my soul. And so I found out though that science and anything involved in like the and scientific analysis and combining the heart passions of passions of my heart was really where I wanted to be. And so I had been working in the inner city as a tutor and knew that there was so much that these communities needed. And I was like, well, why aren't there medical clinics in these areas? Why are there entire, like literal medical deserts in our cities? And so I really just got this burden and a passion for um, starting medical clinics in underserved areas. And I went to Vanderbilt Medical School, which is an amazing medical school, and got my master's in public health and my MD. And God kind of shifted the inner city vision to international because as without access as our inner cities are, there are nations who have suffered civil war who literally have nothing. Like there's no doctors there. There are no nurses because they've all fled. And so we began working um, in post-Civil War situations, starting medical clinics with local partners, finding PAs, physician's assistants, or nurse practitioners to run the clinics. And we would bring teams in. And when we would bring a team, we would double the number of doctors in the nation. It was really like crazy how that happened, or in an area, and served in those areas and did that for 12 years, um, internationally, like traveling internationally with three young children. So that was hard. But it was so rewarding. And just everything I saw was just, it would break your heart to tell the stories, but it would also warm your heart with the hope of that people can recover, that they can survive the unthinkable and rebuild their society. And I watched them do it. It was really amazing.
You had your heart set in this, a lot
hmm
of doing a lot of really great things
hmm
internationally. Awesome. So what now you mentioned that the challenges that went along with that with having the young
Yeah.
kids. So
Yeah.
what about the transition out of that?
hmm
Why did you leave that and move on to something else?
We started work in Afghanistan. We had to pull medical clinics staff out because of death threats from the Taliban. And then we moved to Colombia, South America during their conflict up in the mountains with the FARC rebels. And then that got solved. And so then we moved to Sierra Leone after their civil war. And that work lasted for 10 years. We thought it would last for 20. The local people grew so fast and took ownership so amazingly that after 10 years, we were looking around going, okay, I know you love us, but do you need us? Like, do you really need this anymore? And we were looking for other opportunities. And that was about the same time that my oldest entered middle school. And you can do international. I was traveling a lot. You can do international travel when the kids are younger and kind of patchwork with babysitters or whatever, maybe relatives. It just started to get a little untenable with the kids at the age they were. And I just needed to be home. Um, we were also at that time contemplating a move from Nashville, where we were living, up to Cincinnati, where we live now, and planting a church. And as we just took time to pray and just go, what is it that I should be doing? And should we start another work, or do I just need a season of rest and writing and then go back into it? So I did. I had a season, about a year and a half. I did some writing on community development and really just rested because it was a very hectic season for those 10 years of a lot of international travel and juggling everything with the kids and just spent time with the kids at home. We transitioned the nonprofit that we had started to another group that they were going to do some things in another area of the world. And we're like, have at it, go. And, I resigned and gave the reins to them. And I just sat for a while and I just kind of rested and recovered. And that was good. I think when you have like those big seasons of where you're really pouring out a lot and the travel's hard, your schedule's crazy, it's good to have a brief season of recovery. My season, I thought it would last a couple months. It was like a year, and I think that was good.
Yeah, that's awesome. I completely agree with that. That you put
Mhm.
your so much of your energy into different projects, and to then take that time and kind of
Mhm.
recharge that battery.
Mhm.
Definitely a good thing. When you first started talking about this, it kind of reminded me
Mhm.
of I was speaking with Bill from Story Builders, and he had a similar but different. I mean, there's some similar themes that you mentioned that kind of intersected with what he was talking about. He was working. He had started a school and
Mhm.
ended up
Mhm.
leaving the school that he had started and took a year
Mhm.
off to work on his writing. And it was
Mhm.
a really powerful story. He's talked about at the same time his wife lost her job, so they had a year where like neither of them had money, and they had like 6 kids, I think. Awesome, awesome story. So just when you were talking about taking that time to recharge and reflecting with a higher power and trying to figure out what's going to happen. So you ended up moving to
Yeah.
Cincinnati, I assume, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you did become you started to become a pastor at that point. You talked about creating a
So
church. Go tell
yeah.
us
So
about that.
we were already pastoring in our local church in Nashville. So we'd been um, on and off staff at our church as associate pastors for years. And so coming up to Cincinnati, it was just a little bit more formalized, I would say. I became the executive pastor. And so um, obviously I had started a nonprofit before and I had helped a few other people go through that process. So, the concept of running a nonprofit was like easy. The business background and the finance background kind of gave me the tools I needed to be able to learn how to manage a nonprofit and how to run, the administrative back ends of a nonprofit. And so um, that was my role for the first 2 years here. Um, in between all of that, when we were still in Nashville, I had a dream about the content of my book, which we'll get to later. But in as we're settling into Cincinnati, I'm looking at this city with the eyes of a fiction writer and a pastor. And so you can sort of imagine that, like, I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to set this book here? But then also, what is, where's our community? Where are we called to? What are we called to do? There's a lot of things you can do as a church, but you can't do all of them, especially not as a young church, a small church. And so we were planting in 2013 and um, got going pretty quickly, and we're building steam and was part of all that as the executive pastor. And at some point, like it was either go full time or back off, let someone else do that full time, and be focused on more of the ministry side. And so I've done that. And then that's when really I started writing as well. And that I feel like being in Cincinnati and understanding the city, seeing how um, the issues of our past, racial issues and racial tension of our past in the city, have affected the city now. It's changed how what we focus on for ministry and what we focus on as a church. It's also informed my writing. I don't know if you're familiar, but Cincinnati has had a history of race riots, and the city itself is a lot of really small towns that got big and made one big city. And so, like people who are from one area, they may leave for college, but then they come back, and that's where they have their kids. And so when you're if you're an ethnic minority it can be very it can appear very segregated, and people tend to clump together. And so you'll go down a big street and literally the neighborhood changes. So our church is ethnically diverse from the beginning. Our senior pastor and his wife are Black Americans, and then my husband and I are white Americans, and we have other people on staff that are Asian or Hispanic or whatever. And just having that picture of a diverse staff has helped us to birth a diverse congregation. And so we've been part of that sort of conversation in our city ever since we started. And that's a blessing and an honor to have been part of that.
Fostering that diversity is really, really admirable. You're talking
Mhm.
about the business background and the
Yeah.
nonprofit. Okay. Now, when it comes to the ministry side of things, did you go back and get more education formally or otherwise to help give you that solid foundation from a ministry
Yeah.
perspective?
Informally, I've not done seminary, and neither's my husband. We had to learn literally on the fly. And some of that is our family of churches has training and curriculum for people who are not full-time in the ministry, who aren't going to be the lead pastors or the vocational ministers. So this is training in how to do ministry on just a what maybe many people will call a lay ministry basis. And so we've not only been through that training, but we lead that training in our local context. And so we've taken people and helped equip them to do ministry in their everyday lives, whether they're a teacher or a nurse or a business person or a truck driver. It doesn't matter. Like this training is applicable across the board.
How easy was it for you to actually start the church itself? Was there a lot of red tape? Was it something simple, easy to do? Did you have to, what was that like?
Yeah. So at first we were under our sending church from Nashville, and that gave us some breathing room for 5 years to kind of go, okay, let's get to know our ministry context, let them deal with all the red tape and all the details. But as we started growing, we realized, okay, this is not going to work forever. Sending everything down to Nashville, eh, and we really wanted to plant other churches. And so that was going to be another complication. So we actually did get our 501c3 from the IRS. We're incorporated in Ohio. We have a nonprofit registration in Ohio. We are like every kind of like licensing and registration you need as a church, we got it. Our ministers are licensed. Everyone that is in is covered by an employment insurance, and we've got health insurance and all all the stuff, property insurance. So all of that had to be set up. It took us, it was an 18-month project that I led, and it took us every bit of that time. It was everything from setting up our own accounting system and our own payroll system to our own HR function. And we had to, have recruit and develop our own board of directors, and what sort of leadership structure were we going to have. Governance in churches can be really different. And so we had to make those decisions. And so everything had to be decided. Everything had to be dealt with. Logo. We had a logo that had to be developed, and a website that had to be developed, and an app, and all the things. And at the time, we were about a 250 person church. So that's not small. It's well above the national average. National average is about 100 for churches. So we're double the national average, and now just getting all this together and going. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of work. Um, but we did it, and it's all great.
Now, what about the physical space? How did you build that up? Did you basically secure funding from Nashville, or is that all local
No,
community raised? How did that happen?
we rented for a long time. And then there was a Nazarene church in our community that was what we call graying out. So there were 11 people that attended. They were all over the age of 70 or 80. And the pastor he had pretty severe cancer. And we didn't want the church to die, and neither did the denomination. So we partnered with the local Nazarene diocese, and did a rental for a while, and then a land contract, and then we bought it. And a lot of that was, well, all of that was happening during COVID. So that was really fun. But even better was our people just got behind the project, and we raised hundreds of thousands of dollars to renovate the space because we couldn't renovate the space yet. It was the building was built in 1972. So you can imagine the state of it. It needed a lot of repairs, a lot of renovation. And so that process was about a 3-year process in total between raising the capital, securing, we secured a private loan with a local financier. And that, again, during COVID, no one was lending. And now, we have this amazing space that we've been able to make our own. The kids areas are fully renovated. Um, we've replaced, I think, every single outlet and wire in the building. We've replaced the HVAC. We took the boiler out, and we have a tankless water heater now. Like literally every major system you can imagine, we've had to replace. We've had to put French drains in the basement, and now the next thing is maybe the parking lot. So like literally even the landscaping, everything, the roof, everything has been replaced. And we have an amazing sound system, and just we're just blessed. We're just so blessed.
That
Yeah.
is
And three
really
and three services, and now we're bumping up against 600 on a Sunday.
That is fantastic. That's quite an accomplishment. I'm not quite out of time yet, but we're kind of getting that direction. So
Hmm.
let's talk about your book some. So
Yeah.
you're an author. You've written several books at this point, published
Hmm.
several at this point as well. So let's talk about you as an
Yeah.
author. How did you get started with that?
There was a dream I had in 2012, and I saw our nation 45 years after a civil war. We had fought over racial issues, and a dictator had come in and divided us up into our ethnic groups and put up big walls. And so kids were being raised in that context, not ever having met someone from another ethnicity. And so if you can imagine it, the cultures had really diverged away from each other. Asian culture had become much more Asian, Black culture much more Black, and white culture had very much you know concentric on white, and same with Hispanic. And so the cultures were very different. And there were teenagers growing up who didn't have our baggage, who didn't have this preconceived notion of anyone based on their color. They were just curious. They got connected in a underground resistance movement, and really just wanted to fix things, fix the world. And I woke up and was just like, what is this? And this was in 2012. We have a Black president. We're not supposed to have these racial issues anymore. And then Trayvon Martin is killed, and lo and behold, we realize we still have racial issues. And of course, it's 2024, and we realize we still have racial issues. And so I think I felt the need to write this series and write these books because I am concerned about where America's going, how we are dealing with each other when we disagree, how our public discourse is going is not good. And I know that there's a better way. So if I can help be part of that solution for younger kids, for the teenagers and young adults, and inspire them to act differently, then maybe we can help change the tide of where our country's going. So that's my goal and my burden. I published the first book in the Divided series, titled Divided, in September. And the next book is coming out next year, but I have novellas. There's a prequel novella that I released in January, and another one is coming out at February.
That's awesome. And I believe you said that these were all self-published, correct?
They are self-published. They're young adult dystopian, and so the ebooks are available on Amazon, and the paperbacks are available anywhere books are sold.
This is the part of the show where I'd like to extend the courtesy to my guests. If there is something that you'd like to talk about, a project you're working on, a cause you believe in, more about your books, if you want to take another minute or two, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Yeah. So if people want to find out about the world of Divided, this young adult dystopian adventure I've written, they can find that on Amazon. But the best place to connect with me is my website, ccrobinsonauthor.com. I am on all the socials as at ccrobinsonauthor. Except X, I'm not there. But everywhere else you can find me. And I love to connect. I love meeting readers. I love talking with readers. So come find me.
That is fantastic. I'll make sure you get all those links from you. I'll put them in the show notes on the website. They'll be all over the place. So when people are trying to find you, they'll be able to find you. Cece Robinson, it's been awesome having you on Time to Discuss, and we learned about what it was like to journey from finance to medicine to being a pastor and an author.
Thank you, Dan.